I sighed as I finally slid the last box into place, my muscles aching from a day of moving furniture and unpacking. The small 2-bedroom home I just bought wasn't much, but it was mine, the first place I could truly call my own after 15 years of military service. I'd spent months searching for the perfect spot to settle down, and this cozy cottage on Maple Street seemed ideal. That is, until I heard the sound of a key turning in my front door lock. I froze, hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that wasn't there. Combat instincts die hard. The door swung open, and a woman stepped inside, dragging a rolling suitcase behind her. She didn't notice me standing in the kitchen archway, partially hidden by shadow as evening descended. "Finally," she muttered, flipping on lights without hesitation. "Time to make this dump presentable." I cleared my throat. "Excuse me?" the woman screamed, dropping her purse and spinning around. She was perhaps in her 50s, expensively dressed with highlighted blonde hair cut in what I'd later learn was called a "Can I speak to the manager, Bob?" "Who are you?" she demanded, hand clutched to her chest. "What are you doing in my house?" I crossed my arms. "Your house? I think there's been a mistake. I closed on this property yesterday." The woman's shock transformed into something harder, entitlement crystallizing on her face. "That's impossible. The Homeowners Association would never approve someone like you for this neighborhood." And that was my introduction to Marjorie Vance, HOA president of Pleasant Pines Community, and the woman who would spend the next 6 months trying to drive me out of my own home, by any means necessary. My name is Keith Vincent, and until that moment, I had no idea what an HOA even was. "I don't need HOA approval," I said, picking up her suitcase and setting it outside my door. "I own this house. If you'd like to explain why you have a key to my property, I'm happy to call the police to help sort this out." Marjorie's face flushed red. "Don't threaten me. I'm the HOA president. I have keys to every property in Pleasant Pines." "Not anymore," I said, holding out my hand. "My key, please." "This is ridiculous," she huffed, but dropped the key into my palm. "There's obviously been a miscommunication. This house was supposed to be prepared for our community manager." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean yourself?" "The HOA board voted to convert this property into housing for community leadership," she said stiffly. "The previous owner agreed. The previous owner sold to me," I countered. "Legally. With proper documentation." She gave me a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see about that. Pleasant Pines has standards, Mr. Vincent. Keith Vincent. Well, Mr. Vincent, I suggest you review our community guidelines thoroughly." She gestured toward my truck parked in the driveway. "For starters, commercial vehicles are prohibited after 7 p.m. That's my personal vehicle. It has a dent in the fender and hasn't been washed recently. Unacceptable." She pulled a business card from her purse and placed it on my entry table. "You'll be hearing from us. Pleasant Pines is a very particular community. Not everyone fits in." After she left, I locked the door and leaned against it, exhausted and confused. What had I gotten myself into? The realtor had mentioned an HOA but assured me it was minimal, just basic landscaping standards and a small quarterly fee. As I picked up Marjorie's card, my phone rang. It was my old army buddy, Carlos, checking to see how the move was going. "Man, I just had the strangest encounter," I told him. "Some woman from the HOA tried to walk into my house with her own key." Carlos laughed. "Welcome to civilian life. HOAs are like mini dictatorships. What's this one called?" "Pleasant Pines." The line went quiet. "Carlos?" "Keith, buddy, I've heard about that place. My cousin's friend tried buying there last year. The HOA blocked it, then suddenly the house wasn't for sale anymore." "They can't block a sale," I said. "That's not how real estate works." "Maybe not legally," Carlos said. "But these Pleasant Pines people have a reputation. Just watch yourself, okay?" After hanging up, I went to my laptop and searched for Pleasant Pines HOA. The results were illuminating. While the official website showed manicured lawns and smiling families, community forums told a different story: complaints about selective enforcement, mysterious property damage for those who spoke up, and a revolving door of new homeowners who never seemed to stay more than a year. I was about to close my laptop when a notification pinged, an email from Pleasant Pines HOA at community.org with the subject line: Violation notice, immediate action required. The message listed 3 violations: unapproved exterior paint color, the house was beige, hardly controversial; unapproved landscaping, the simple flower bed the previous owner had planted; and failure to register proper resident documentation. A fine of $150 was already assessed to my account. I deleted the email. If Marjorie wanted a fight, she'd have to try harder than that. The next morning, I awoke to the sound of someone in my backyard. Grabbing a baseball bat, I crept to the window and peered out. A man in a work uniform was measuring my fence with a tape measure, making notes on a clipboard. I yanked open the back door. "Can I help you?" The man jumped. "Oh. Sorry, sir. HOA inspection. Your fence is 6 inches higher than regulation. Did I authorize you to be on my property?" He looked uncomfortable. "We don't need authorization, sir. It's in the covenant." "What covenant?" "I haven't signed anything with the HOA. The property covenant runs with the land, sir," he explained nervously. "When you buy in Pleasant Pines, you automatically agree to the terms." I gritted my teeth. "And does this covenant allow you to enter private property without notice?" "For inspections, yes. Section 8, paragraph. Get off my property," I said quietly. "Now." The man hurried away, but not before I noticed him taking photos of my house. I spent the rest of the morning searching through my closing documents, finding a reference to HOA covenants but no actual copy of the rules. My realtor wasn't answering calls, which seemed suspicious given how attentive she'd been during the buying process. By afternoon, I'd received 3 more violation notices by email, each with escalating fines. The latest claimed my trash can had been visible from the street for more than 6 hours after collection, a $250 offense. I decided to take a more direct approach and drove to the Pleasant Pines Community Center, a small but elegant building near the neighborhood entrance. The woman at the front desk looked up as I entered, her welcoming smile faltering when I introduced myself. "I'd like a copy of the HOA covenant," I said. "And I need to discuss some erroneous violation notices. Mrs. Vance handles all disputes," she said, sliding a business card across the desk, identical to the one Marjorie had left at my house. "She's in a meeting now. You can make an appointment for next week." "Next week isn't acceptable. I'm being fined hundreds of dollars for rules I haven't even seen." The woman's eyes flicked toward a door behind her. "I really can't." The door opened, and Marjorie emerged with 2 men in business suits. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw me. "Mr. Vincent," she said coolly. "This is a surprise. I need a copy of the covenant and an explanation for these violation notices." Marjorie smiled thinly. "Of course. Deanna, please provide Mr. Vincent with our welcome packet." She turned to me. "The violations are straightforward. Your property doesn't meet our standards. Standards I wasn't informed of. Ignorance of the rules doesn't exempt you from following them." She gestured to one of the men beside her. "This is Gerald Thompson, our HOA attorney. If you have concerns, you're welcome to direct them to him, after you've brought your property into compliance." I accepted the thick binder the receptionist handed me. "And the key you had to my house? Is that standard procedure?" The attorney stepped forward. "The previous owner provided access for maintenance purposes. We haven't yet updated our records." "Update them now," I said firmly. "No one enters my property without my permission." "We'll see what the covenant allows," Marjorie said with a smirk. "Pleasant Pines has operated a certain way for 15 years, Mr. Vincent. One new resident isn't going to change that. As I turned to leave, I noticed a wall of photos, past and present HOA board members. Marjorie featured prominently in nearly every picture for the past decade, but what caught my attention was the property map beside the photos. Red pins marked several homes, including mine. That night, I studied the covenant, growing increasingly uneasy. The rules were comprehensive to the point of absurdity: specific brands of exterior paint, approved vegetation lists, even restrictions on what could be visible through windows. More concerning were the enforcement clauses. The HOA had broad powers to issue fines, place liens, and even initiate foreclosure proceedings for unpaid penalties. I was reading about community aesthetic standards when a knock at my door interrupted. A middle-aged woman stood on my porch, nervously glancing over her shoulder. "Hi, I'm Diana Miller. I live 2 doors down," she said quietly. "Can I come in?" Once inside, Diana's nervousness intensified. "I saw you at the community center today. I wanted to warn you, Marjorie has already started talking about you at her coffee meetings. Warning people about the dangerous new neighbor?" I asked wryly. "Something like that. Look, I don't know your situation, but Marjorie doesn't like surprises. When someone buys a house she has plans for." Diana trailed off. "What kind of plans?" Diana hesitated. "Marjorie has friends who want to move into Pleasant Pines. The right kind of people, she says. Sometimes houses become available unexpectedly. Through intimidation? I've said too much already." Diana stood to leave. "Just be careful. Check your mail every day, take date-stamped photos of your property regularly, and get security cameras." "That seems excessive for a neighborhood dispute." She gave me a sad smile. "You haven't been to an HOA meeting yet. Oh, and if you find a real estate flyer for your own house, don't ignore it." After Diana left, I installed the security system I'd planned to set up later that week. Her warnings seemed dramatic, but something about Marjorie's determination unsettled me. I'd faced threats during my military service. I recognized the look of someone who wouldn't back down easily. The next morning, I found a real estate flyer on my doorstep for my house. It described a coming soon property, featuring interior photos I recognized from the previous owner's listing. According to the flyer, the house would be available the following month at a price well below what I'd paid. I called the listed agent, who sounded confused. "I didn't create that flyer, sir. Someone must have used our template without permission." That afternoon, a group of people parked outside my house and began taking photos. When I confronted them, a woman in designer sunglasses smiled apologetically. "So sorry to disturb you. Marjorie mentioned this property would be available soon. We're just getting a feel for the neighborhood. This property isn't for sale," I said firmly. The woman looked confused. "But Marjorie said the owner was being deployed overseas next month." I felt a chill. I hadn't told anyone in Pleasant Pines about my military background. "I'm not being deployed. I'm retired military, and I just bought this house. Whoever told you it would be available was mistaken." As the group left, I noticed a car parked down the street, Marjorie watching from behind the wheel. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. Instead, she smiled and drove off. That evening, I received a certified letter from the HOA, a fine of $2,500 for operating a business from a residential property, and unauthorized gathering causing traffic obstruction. The evidence cited was the group of people Marjorie herself had sent. The next few weeks settled into an unsettling pattern. Each day brought new violation notices, some legitimate under the draconian rules, others completely fabricated. My garbage cans were mysteriously left in the street. Plants in my garden died overnight, followed by landscaping violation notices. The HOA inspection team showed up randomly, measuring, photographing, and documenting any imperfection. My security cameras captured some of these incidents, including an HOA contracted landscaper pouring something on my lawn at 5 a.m. When confronted with the footage, Marjorie dismissed it as routine weed treatment, authorized by the covenant. The financial impact was mounting. I'd accrued nearly $5,000 in fines, and Marjorie made it clear that non-payment would result in a lien against my property. My attempts to appeal were denied due to procedural errors in my submission forms. Frustrated, I began reaching out to neighbors. Most avoided me, hurrying inside when I approached. A few expressed sympathy but refused to get involved. Marjorie has a long memory, one elderly man told me. My wife and I opposed her once. Our grandchildren weren't approved for pool passes that summer. Coincidence, she said? Only Diana remained openly friendly, though our conversations happened away from Pleasant Pines. Over coffee at a downtown cafe, she explained Marjorie's usual tactics. She identifies properties she wants control of, usually corner lots, homes with specific features, or houses near board members' properties. Then she makes ownership miserable until people sell. That's illegal, I pointed out. Proving it is the problem. Everything is technically within the covenant's language she's amended 12 times in 10 years. How does she keep getting elected? I asked. Diana laughed bitterly. Proxy voting. Most homeowners don't attend meetings, so they sign over their votes. Marjorie's assistant goes door to door collecting them, implying benefits for cooperation. By the time the actual vote happens, she's already won. I thought of the red pins on the community map. And the houses she targets? What happens to them? Diana stirred her coffee. They mysteriously sell below market value to people connected to board members. Her daughter bought the Hendersons' place last year after they received daily violations for 3 months straight. That's real estate fraud. It's selective enforcement of legitimate rules, Diana corrected. Technically legal, completely unethical, and nearly impossible to fight without community support. That conversation gave me an idea. If Marjorie's power came from controlling information and isolating opponents, perhaps the solution was transparency. I created a private online forum for Pleasant Pines residents, personally inviting neighbors with postcards featuring photos of my violation notices alongside identical conditions at board members' homes. The response was immediate, not from neighbors, but from the HOA attorney. A cease and desist letter arrived claiming my unauthorized communication violated solicitation rules and my photographic evidence constituted invasion of privacy. The latest fine, $3,000. I was considering my options when an unexpected ally appeared. Ted Garrison, who lived across from Diana, knocked on my door with a flash drive in hand. I was on the board 3 years ago, he explained, looking uncomfortable. I resigned when I realized what was happening, but I kept records. Thought they might be useful someday. The flash drive contained meeting minutes, financial reports, and email exchanges between board members. Most damning were conversations about targeting specific properties for community acquisition and manipulating violation enforcement to pressure sales. Why give me this? I asked. Ted sighed. My wife wants to sell and move. She's tired of living under Marjorie's thumb. But I keep thinking about the next family who buys our house. Someone should stand up to her. Armed with this information, I consulted an attorney specializing in HOA disputes. Her assessment was sobering. While the evidence suggested ethical violations, proving legal wrongdoing would require extensive resources. HOAs have significant legal protection, and Marjorie had been careful to operate within technical compliance of the covenant. Your best option is collective action, my attorney advised. If enough homeowners challenge the board simultaneously, you might force an election review. Gathering support proved difficult. Years of intimidation had trained residents to avoid conflict. Online forum participation remained anonymous, with many expressing fear of retribution. I needed a catalyst, something to overcome the community's resignation. It arrived unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning. I woke to find a moving truck in my driveway and workers carrying boxes toward my front door. Marjorie stood on the lawn, directing operations with clipboard in hand. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, hurrying outside in sweatpants. Marjorie looked up, feigning surprise. "Mr. Vincent, I thought you'd already vacated the property." "Vacated? This is my home." "Perhaps you should check your mail more carefully," she said, handing me an envelope. Inside was a foreclosure notice, claiming I'd failed to pay HOA dues and fines totaling $15,230. "This is fabricated," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I've documented every communication with the HOA. Documentation can be lost," Marjorie replied. "The board has records showing multiple notices were delivered. It's unfortunate you chose to ignore them." One of the movers approached uncertainly. "Ma'am, the resident is still here. We can't proceed with occupancy." "This isn't a resident, it's a trespasser," Marjorie stated firmly. "The property has been legally reclaimed by the association." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling the police." Marjorie smiled. "Please do. I have all the necessary documentation showing the property's status." What she didn't know was that my security cameras had been recording our entire conversation, and that several neighbors, including Diana, had emerged from their homes to witness the confrontation. When police arrived, the situation became more complicated. Marjorie presented official-looking paperwork showing a completed foreclosure process. I countered with my mortgage statements, property deed, and evidence that I'd never received legitimate foreclosure notices. The officers, reluctant to make legal determinations, suggested it was a civil matter requiring court resolution. "In the meantime," the officer said, "the current occupant remains until a judge orders otherwise." Marjorie was furious. "This man has violated numerous community standards. The HOA has clear authority to assess fines, yes," the officer interrupted. "Not to physically remove residents without a court order." As the moving truck departed and Marjorie stormed off to her car, Diana approached with several neighbors in tow. "We saw everything," she said, "and we're willing to go on record about what's been happening here." That afternoon, my living room hosted an impromptu community meeting. 12 homeowners shared similar experiences: selective enforcement, mysterious property damage, fabricated violations. Ted Garrison presented his documentation, and others contributed their own records. A pattern emerged. Marjorie and board members had systematically targeted at least 20 properties over 8 years, pressuring owners to sell at reduced prices to connected buyers. "The annual meeting is next week," Diana noted. "With this many witnesses and evidence, we could force a board review." "She'll have proxy votes lined up," someone pointed out. "Not if we get to our neighbors first," I suggested. Marjorie's overplayed her hand. "Trying to move someone into my house while I'm still living here? That's not selective enforcement, it's attempted fraud." We developed a plan: document sharing, door-to-door outreach, and a presentation for the annual meeting. Each person took responsibility for contacting 10 neighbors with evidence packages. Diana, who worked in marketing, created a simple, fact-based presentation on HOA funds and enforcement patterns. The days leading to the annual meeting were tense. Marjorie's attorney sent cease and desist letters to everyone involved in our coalition. 2 neighbors reported pressure from board members, including vague threats about property values and community standing. But for the first time, residents openly compared notes instead of suffering in isolation. My own situation escalated when Marjorie filed an emergency injunction claiming I was damaging community property. When a marshal arrived to post the notice, my security cameras captured him placing it on my door without any attempt to verify I was home. More concerning, the document contained numerous falsehoods, including claims I'd threatened board members. The injunction hearing was scheduled for the day after the annual meeting, a timing that seemed deliberate. If I were barred from my home before the meeting, I couldn't present our findings. The night before the meeting, Diana called in a panic. "They've changed the venue and time. Notices just went out claiming scheduling conflicts moved the meeting to tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at the golf clubhouse instead of 7 p.m. at the community center. That's no coincidence, I said. My injunction hearing is at 10 a.m. downtown. There's no way I could attend both. Exactly. And most working residents can't make a 9 a.m. weekday meeting. We scrambled to alert our coalition. Some took emergency personal days. Others arranged to arrive late to work. By 8:30 the next morning, our group gathered at the golf clubhouse, only to find a sign directing attendees to a different room than announced. The actual meeting had started at 8 a.m., not 9. By the time we located the correct room, Marjorie was concluding proceedings. And with the proxy votes recorded, the current board is re-elected for the upcoming term, she announced to a nearly empty room, save for board members and their spouses. This meeting isn't valid, Diana called out as we entered. Proper notice wasn't provided per Section 4 of the bylaws. Marjorie's smile tightened. Notice was delivered to all residents yesterday. The meeting was properly convened with quorum achieved through proxy votes. We'd like to examine those proxy forms, Ted said. The bylaws allow review of all voting records. They'll be available during normal business hours next week, Marjorie replied smoothly. Now, if you'll excuse us, this meeting is adjourned. I stepped forward. Before you leave, the residents would like to address concerns about selective enforcement and potential misuse of HOA authority. Any concerns should be submitted in writing through proper channels, Marjorie said, gathering her papers. I have another appointment. My injunction hearing, I said. Conveniently scheduled to conflict with this meeting, which was then rescheduled to ensure I couldn't attend either. Murmurs spread among the residents who had managed to arrive. Marjorie's face hardened. Your persecution complex doesn't interest me, Mr. Vincent. If you have legitimate concerns, file them properly. As she tried to leave, Diana blocked the doorway. We have documentation of systematic targeting of specific properties, including Keith's home. We've prepared copies for everyone. For a moment, Marjorie looked genuinely alarmed as Diana's colleagues distributed packets to all present. She quickly recovered. Distributing unauthorized materials at an official meeting violates. Actually, it doesn't, Ted interrupted, holding up the covenant. Article 7 specifically allows homeowners to present written concerns at any official gathering. For the next 30 minutes, we presented evidence of Marjorie's tactics, selective enforcement, fabricated violations, and property acquisitions by board members' associates, following aggressive enforcement actions. Most damning was the attempted move-in at my house, fraudulently claiming foreclosure on a property with no legitimate proceedings. The residents present were stunned, particularly by financial records showing HOA funds used for property rehabilitation on homes purchased by board members' relatives. While Marjorie maintained her composure, insisting everything was procedurally appropriate, her attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable. As the presentation concluded, I checked my watch. I need to leave for my hearing, but I want everyone to know that regardless of today's outcome, I've filed complaints with the District Attorney's Office and the State Real Estate Commission. Marjorie's attorney pulled her aside for a whispered conversation. When she returned, her demeanor had changed subtly. In the interest of community harmony, perhaps we should convene a special review committee to address these concerns, she suggested. Mr. Vincent, if you're willing to postpone your hearing, we could discuss resolution options. I recognize the tactic, delay and diffuse. The hearing proceeds. The evidence has been presented. The community will decide what happens next. As I left for court, Diana assured me they would continue pressing the issue with residents. By the time I arrived downtown, my attorney was waiting with news. Marjorie had called to withdraw the injunction request. Something spooked her, my attorney observed. Did anything happen at the meeting? We exposed her playbook, I said. And apparently sunlight is a powerful disinfectant. The following days brought significant developments. An emergency board meeting was called, properly noticed this time, where 3 board members resigned, citing personal reasons. Community attendance was unprecedented, with homeowners openly discussing Marjorie's tactics for the first time. More surprisingly, the county district attorney's office contacted me. An investigator explained that my complaint wasn't the first. They'd received multiple reports about Pleasant Pines over the years but lacked concrete evidence. Our documentation had provided what they needed to open a formal investigation. 2 weeks later, Marjorie and the HOA treasurer were arrested on multiple charges: falsifying official documents, attempted real estate fraud, and misappropriation of HOA funds. The investigation revealed a scheme more extensive than we'd imagined. Marjorie had been falsifying financial records for years, diverting HOA funds to shell companies that provided services to the community at inflated rates. The attempted move-in at my house proved to be her undoing. The fraudulent foreclosure documents contained forged notary signatures, a felony that provided prosecutors with leverage for a broader investigation. At an emergency community meeting following the arrests, residents voted overwhelmingly to dissolve the current board and elect new leadership. Diana was nominated as interim president, with Ted as treasurer. Their first acts were to suspend all outstanding violation notices pending review and commission an independent audit of HOA finances. The full accounting took months, but the results justified every suspicion. Beyond the selective enforcement, Marjorie had orchestrated a complex scheme, targeting properties, manufacturing violations, forcing sales, then arranging purchases by associates who paid kickbacks through service contracts with the HOA. Over 8 years, this network had acquired 17 properties, generating hundreds of thousands in illicit profits. As criminal proceedings continued, Pleasant Pines began healing. The new board established transparent procedures, including recorded meetings, publicly available financial statements, and a requirement that all enforcement actions be reviewed by a rotating committee of non-board residents. 6 months after my confrontation with Marjorie on my front lawn, I sat on my newly built deck, properly permitted and approved, sharing drinks with Diana, Ted, and several neighbors who had become friends through our shared experience. "I still can't believe she thought she could just move someone into your house while you were living in it," Diana laughed. "The ultimate HOA power trip." "It was her downfall," Ted observed. "Selective enforcement was hard to prove, but fabricating foreclosure documents? That was unambiguous fraud." I raised my glass. "To community oversight. The best protection against petty tyranny." As evenings settled over Pleasant Pines, now truly living up to its name, I reflected on the unexpected battle I'd found upon retirement. My military career had taught me about facing adversity, but it was here, in suburban America, that I'd found a different kind of service, standing up for a community against those who would exploit it. Marjorie's trial was scheduled for the following month, with most Pleasant Pines residents planning to attend. Her attorney had approached the district attorney about a plea deal, but prosecutors, armed with evidence from multiple properties and years of financial records, showed little interest in leniency. The most meaningful change, though, wasn't in legal proceedings but in daily life. Neighbors now greeted each other openly, shared maintenance resources, and approached covenant enforcement with common sense rather than rigid authoritarianism. Children played in front yards without fear of violation notices for unauthorized recreational equipment. My house, once targeted for appropriation, had become something of a community symbol. The red pin that had marked it on Marjorie's map had been removed and presented to me as a good-natured gift at the first meeting of the reformed HOA. A reminder that sometimes, standing your ground is exactly what a community needs. As my neighbors departed that evening, Diana lingered to help clean up. "You know," she said, collecting empty glasses, "when you moved in, I gave you 6 months before Marjorie drove you out. Most people just couldn't take the pressure." I smiled. "I've faced worse than an entitled HOA president with delusions of grandeur. Still, most people wouldn't have fought back so effectively. You organized us, gave us courage." "You all had the courage," I countered. "You just needed someone to go first." Diana looked across the neighborhood, where porch lights created a warm, welcoming glow. Pleasant Pines was a good community before Marjorie took over. Now it feels like it's becoming that again. As she left, I remained on my deck, enjoying the simple pleasure of a home that was truly mine, no longer under threat from fabricated violations or fraudulent claims. The next day would bring another HOA meeting, but this time to discuss community improvements and actual resident concerns, not to rubber stamp a dictator's agenda. Sometimes, I reflected, the most important victories aren't won on distant battlefields but in ordinary neighborhoods, where people find the courage to stand together against injustice, even when it comes disguised as community standards and property values. Marjorie had thought she could intimidate her way into possession of my house, never expecting that her actions would ultimately free an entire community from years of manipulation and fear. The key she once held to my front door now sat in an evidence locker, along with the paper trail of her schemes. And Pleasant Pines, no longer ruled by fear, had become the kind of neighborhood where people actually wanted to live, not just because of its manicured lawns and uniform fences, but because its residents had learned the true meaning of community.